Hello and welcome to Cardinal Connect TV. I am Nick Coffey, the creator and publisher for the CardinalConnect.com. To go along with our weekly webcasts where we break down, talk about anything and everything going on with U of L, we're also now going to be doing brief post-game videos for Louisville and football, basketball games where we kind of recap and give our thoughts on the game in hand. And of course, the first one up is Louisville's 34-3 victory over Florida International, a game where you pretty much got exactly what you expected from the most part. Florida International was very bad. There was very few people in the stands. Louisville didn't have much trouble at all. But from Louisville specifically, I don't know if you got exactly what you expected. Now, the most important thing was they did get a win, a 34-3 win, a convincing win, but they didn't really look very good. Now, I looked at this as an opportunity for Louisville to really go out and get some repetition against a bad team. If you look at the first few games of the season, the Miami game, Louisville won, and really, even though that game was the 31-13 is a pretty convincing win over Miami, it wasn't a game that had a lot of offensive rhythm. And then against Murray State, that's your second game in a matter of 5 days. So I think Bobby Petrino, I think he played 80-something players in that game. So that was more of a game where they just got a lot of guys some rest and got them rested up before they go into Virginia for their first conference road game. That game, obviously, we know how that ended. Not a good game for the offense whatsoever. And against FIU, despite scoring 34 points, not a great day for the offense. Again, back-to-back weeks. And if you're going to start talking about the positives of that game, I think the first thing you got to point to is James Quick. He had what was without question the best game of his career. Back-to-back weeks where he really played well, starting to really be the top playmaker for this offense. But unfortunately, outside of James Quick, not a whole lot going on when it comes to moving the ball up and down the field. But talking about the positives, you've got to also mention the defense. Louisville's defense had a couple of drives in that game where they really, didn't play well. But for the most part, I'd say for about 90% of the season, they've played really well. They've done their part and more, if you look at it. But the offense is the big question. And going into the season, I don't think anybody would have thought that the offense would be the unit that is not quite getting the job done. And sure enough, that's where we are. As I mentioned, 34-3, a game where Louisville didn't have a whole lot of trouble. It took a couple of big plays from James Quick at the end of the first half to really break the game open. But not much going on the ground. Michael Dyer made his debut. Didn't look bad by any means. He actually showed some speed bursts there, and for the most part, I think he looks to be healthy. But really, the ground game wasn't a big factor in the game whatsoever. I mean, I think Dominique Brown led the team in rushing, but it wasn't much at all. The one big red flag from this game is the quarterback position. There's no reason to beat around the bush. The quarterback play was simply not good. I looked at this for this game with Reggie Bonifant not making the trip to Miami. I looked at this to be an opportunity for Will Gardner to really go out there and just get a lot of repetition against a bad team. Not a game where he goes out and really pads his stats, but just gets rhythm. If you look at Will all season, I think he's not played well. There's no reason to really sugarcoat that. He's been bad for the most part of the season. He's not been very good whatsoever. And I looked at this to be an opportunity for him to go out there and get some rhythm, to establish himself. And I think he's got some talent, but he's not really put any consistent rhythm together all season. He didn't do that against FIU at all. Didn't play, awful, but he didn't play well. And there's really not many people I think that can make excuses for Will Gardner anymore at this point because he's had his opportunities. I looked at the FIU game as a big opportunity for him to get some confidence, as I mentioned, rhythm. Just get to the point where he's actually leading the offense, and we didn't see that at all. A couple of senseless turnovers. I think he now has 85% of Louisville's turnovers on the season have come from Will Gardner himself. So that's the big red flag there. I think now, we're going to be talking about this throughout the week, but you may see a point where they're now opening the job up for guys to go out there and win that job. And when I say guys, I mean one guy in particular, which is Reggie Bonifant. I think this is now, with him getting back in the mix with the team, it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if he really challenges Gardner and maybe gets some first-team reps and starts to, who knows, maybe in a couple weeks we're looking at him as the starting quarterback. You never want to get too carried away, but with what we've seen from Will Gardner, it really just, it's to the point where now you get into the point, if he's not able to play better and show you more in these games against much weaker competition, you got to think he's probably not going to have good showings against teams like Notre Dame, Clemson, Florida State. I mean, the schedule is only going to get tougher. So that's the big takeaway there, is that the quarterback play is still not where you want it to be. Those are really the positives. As I mentioned, James Quick really just took over the game. The defense still playing well. The negatives is bad. As much as we have to talk about Will Gardner really not getting the job done, it's not all his fault. Now, you could take Will Gardner out of the game, get a new quarterback in there, and that doesn't mean the offensive problems are simply going to go away. It's worth noting the offensive line was atrocious against a bad FIU team. They got whipped pretty much against Virginia for the most part, and they're just not playing well. You saw some changes in the lineup. I think Skylar Lacey made the start. There's different guys playing different positions. I think Jake Smith moved around to a couple of different spots too, and really they're just flat out not getting it done. I think this is a week you play Wake Forest, a team that's really bad as well. Now, Wake Forest is probably the worst team in the ACC. Probably a little bit better than FIU, but you got back-to-back weeks where you're playing bad teams. I think this is the week where Bobby Petrino really goes back to the drawing board in certain positions, not the entire offense or defense, anything like that, but I think there are a couple positions where you kind of go back to, especially the offensive line, where you go back and look at which guys are going to give you the best chance to win a game. And the offensive line, I think they're to make it not to sound so negative, but I do think the best linemen are playing, and they're just simply not getting it done. So they got to do something there, go back to the drawing board, because really, other than the Miami game, I don't think there's been really solid offensive line play all season. So, as I mentioned, Louisville gets 34-3 victory over an FIU team that is bad. There was nobody there. There was the rain delay. It was just probably one of the worst games to watch as a fan on TV, because you like to see your team beat up on an FIU team, but that was just a boring football game to watch. I don't think anybody would really disagree. But Louisville nonetheless gets the win, 34-3. They move to 3-1 on the season, still sitting outside of both polls, the coaches poll and the AP poll. And now I think they look at the next couple weeks here. They've got Wake Forest coming up, which, as I mentioned, is not a very good team, but they do come back to Papa John's Cardinal Stadium for a home game. Hopefully, we thought we'd see it against FIU, but maybe just, I don't really know what to blame it on, but you didn't see a lot of offensive rhythm. James Quick, as I mentioned, the only guy who really stood out. But hopefully, when they get back into Papa John's Cardinal Stadium on Saturday to take on Wake Forest, you'd like to think that's a game where they can really get some momentum going, really get some offensive rhythm, because the offense has really not had any consistent drives all season, and they're somewhere in the middle of the pack towards the bottom of the ACC. And when you got Bobby Petrino calling the plays, I think that's exactly opposite of what a lot of people expected. But as I mentioned, the most important thing is getting a win, and they do that 34-3 over FIU, and now they look ahead to Wake Forest. That does it for this recap of the game. We'll be back. Make sure you guys stay tuned to thecardinalconnect.com. We'll have the weekly webcast, and of course, we'll be back next week with another recap, hopefully recapping a big win over Wake Forest.